Using the wrong rake is the equivalent of using a hairbrush to brush your teeth with. It can cause damage and it can give you less than stellar results. So today's video, we're going to look at the different kinds of rakes and when to use what when and which ones you can forgo based on what your goals are in regards to your garden. Someone in the Geek Crew actually asked this question and I thought it was a silly question to ask, but I don't think it's silly at all. It's actually something that I was even confused by for a while, because there are so many different options. I have a ton of rakes and I'm going to show you at the end of this video which ones are my favorites and which one I truly believe are the only ones you actually need to have as a gardener, because they kind of help with every possible scenario. So number one is actually a leaf rake. I think this is pretty obvious what it's used for. It can remove light debris. So a lot of squash vines can be removed with this. It can obviously remove leaves themselves, and it can remove grass that has been freshly cut, or if you're trying to thatch your grass, a leaf rake is a great tool to go with. If you choose to use this with rocks or clay soil, you're going to be less than impressed because it's not meant for that. It has very flexible teeth for the purpose of catching very lightweight debris. Next in the classics category is the garden rake, aka the bow rake. So leaves actually will clog this up instantly, so it can't be used for leaves effectively. However, what it can be used for is distributing mulch, compost, and or moving soil around, trying to flatten out a soil surface. It has short, heavy metal tines, and this also makes it effective in being able to flip it over and kind of drop it on the soil to break up the soil aggregates. So it's definitely one that you want. I don't think you really need it for a raised bed. You can, of course, use like a hand rake version of that. But if you have an in-ground bed, I think it's a very valuable tool to have. Okay, the next one is actually a landscape rake. Now, these are jumbo-sized garden rakes, and they are literally meant to move rock and gravel. So if you need to flatten out rock or gravel in pathways, maybe you have like a driveway or something like that, this landscape rake is the route you want to go. It is very wide in how large it is, and it has a bit of weight to it to help with grabbing onto those rocks. And the teeth themselves are very small. Okay, next up, let's look at the specialty rakes. Number one is the thatch rake. So like I said before, you could use a leaf rake for this, and this is what I've used for this for years. However, if you're a big lawn person, a thatch rake may be the route you want to go. And what it does is it removes the thatch from your lawn, which is essentially the old organic material building up, which in turn chokes out your grass. So you do want to remove this. Generally, you do it in the spring, but I think a lot of lawn people will do it when necessary throughout the season. I'm not a lawn person, so don't ask me. Next up is the shrub rake. So shrub rakes are kind of like the leaf rake, but much smaller. And they have a very narrow head on them. So you can get handheld ones and you can get stand-up telescopic ones as well. And what the purpose of this is to get underneath of, for example, cedars or perennials or shrubbery without damaging the plants. Because if you have them very closely placed together, you need to be able to get between and around. And so it allows for that because of its small size. So if you have an orchard, or if you have a perennial bed, or if you have a decorative border of some sort, it may be something to look at because it can be useful. For me personally, I don't have one. When it comes to my cedars, I just literally go underneath them and physically pull out all the stuff that falls under them, because they're also heavily flammable, by the way. So you should always make sure you're cleaning out the cedars. But something like a shrub rake would actually probably make this job a lot faster and a lot easier. There's the pond rake or the lake rake or the dugout rake, and that's simply just to remove seaweed and sludge out of the water. That doesn't apply to me. Maybe it applies to you. It's just a specialty rake. We then have the hand rake. So like I said, you can get hand leaf rakes. You can get hand garden rakes. There's so many different versions of this, and it's best served in what I believe to be a raised bed due to how tightly we tend to pack them, as well as in containers. I find it useful. And or I do find it also useful for weeding very quickly in between plants. If we have them crowded in some way, it's more precise in my mind than taking a large kind of garden rake and going through, particularly if you don't want to mess your plants up. So I personally do like to kind of get in there and, really weed out in between with a hand rake over a garden rake, because you can only do so much with that. And before you start basically interfering with the plant's growth and the roots of stuff you want to live. Okay, let's talk about the next category, heavy duty rakes. So first off, there is the stone rake or the rock rake. Now, this isn't so much for leveling out or redistributing pebble-sized, decorative rock. It's meant for moving something that's a little bit more substantial, and in particular, being able to kind of put it up into a hill or a mound of some sort. So it's called a stone rake or a rock rake. They have very dense, firm tines, something similar to the garden rake, but the actual design itself is a little bit different to allow for this. The next one we have is actually the broadfork. Now, the broadfork is not a rake per se. However, it is rake-like, and I think it deserves a place in this category, particularly if you're trying to go no-till and or you're dealing with raised beds that have a level of compaction. So broadforks actually have these really heavy-duty tines on them. You put them kind of on the soil, you stand on top of the rake and wiggle it in, and then you kind of pull back and you lift the soil up. This allows for more oxygen to get into that soil, which in turn allows for more microbial activity, more nutrient cycling, and healthier root system. It can be used in perennial beds. It can be used in annual beds. It can be used in raised beds, you name it. You just have to be able to get on top of whatever it may be, stand on the rake, push down, and pull back. I find it is a little bit difficult to use in something like a lawn or anything that is heavily compacted. But if you don't want to manually be breaking up aggregation, that sort of thing, it's definitely a choice you may want to make. So the next category we have is oddball rakes. I can almost guarantee you've never heard or you may not have seen before. Number one being landscape rake on wheels. So this is great for anyone who has a disability, is unable to really put a lot of power behind it, has a large garden with a lot of work to do, that sort of thing. It's wonderful for that. So if you're, you're aging in some way, or if you've been diagnosed with some sort of disability, you've hurt yourself in some way in the past gardening, then this landscape rake on wheels actually may be a great solution. For those of you that are low on storage, there is a telescopic rake. So telescopic rakes can be used to obviously make it larger or smaller. This means you don't have to have a hand trowel and a hand rake and then also a regular rake, because you can adjust it as needed. The next one is actually a berry rake. This is really popular for anybody who has a ton of different berry bushes that they have to deal with, in particular, like blueberry bushes, for example. And it is literally like a hairbrush. You go into the plant and you kind of brush its hair, and it in turn fills up a basket that can store said berries. If you're enjoying this video so far, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, the hype button, or give it a like. Here are my must-haves when it comes to rakes. Number one is a leaf rake. I've got a lot of leaves. It is absolutely necessary. Number two is the mini hand rake, leaf rake, and I use this for shrubbery and bush, so the bush rake, because I do have some spaces that are very difficult to get into if I was to use a regular sized rake. Outside of that, when I have beds that are in ground, I do really like the garden rake, and it can be used both teeth down, teeth up. It's very versatile to me. It's heavy, so it's very easy to break up aggregation with it. So if you've got an in-ground bed, it's an absolute must in my opinion. But if you've got raised beds, I probably wouldn't spend the money on that. If you have raised beds, I would just, again, use the hand version of it. It has 3 little spikes and it does the exact same thing, but it lets you get the proper leverage on it when you're working in tighter spaces. So Geek Crew, you have to let me know in the comments down below what your rakes you think or you deem the absolute must to be. And if you want to learn more on how to shut down the garden for the year, you're going to want to check out this video right here. I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.